Yes, you took the first step. You self-reflected. When you're done with this is when you now move to your partner. This is when you engage them. And before you engage them, you must choose the right time. If both of you are already fighting, using the power of experiential intimacy, create an experience that makes the environment a bit more welcoming for both of you. Because what you need to do does not need a tense environment. So when you make an environment a bit more welcoming, then you approach them.
This is not a time to go and have this conversation in a public space or in a club with the noise and all that stuff. No.
It's a quiet, intimate conversation between the both of you. Even if you're going to go out, you must choose the setting carefully. Because you're not going there to fight or you're not going there to complain. It's just an exercise between both of you.
Yeah.
And when you now approach them, you bring out your piece of paper.
Okay.
And you tell them that you've been able to put certain things in place, that you wrote down a couple of things you feel you may have done to get them to this point where they're at. That you're giving them this piece of paper or this jotter or whatever you wrote it down on for them to write down anything they feel you may have missed out. And when they do that for you, you now have to that's when you engage them more by telling them that what you have done, you would like them to do the same for you. And when both of you have done this, and mind you, you must be in that state of mind that seeks to reconcile,
That's
to fix. It's important.
So you cannot trivialize this particular experience.
It's too important to be trivialized because you may not get the chance to do it more than once, especially if you're already stonewalling each other. And when you get to that point where your partner does the same for you, this is when you people move to the fourth step. The fourth step is you make this exercise smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. On each of those things you wrote out, you're going to put down 2 steps you're going to take to ensure.
I hope you're writing, because I am. Yeah, we got to sort out this unresolved conflict.
Yes.
It's about time.
You put down 2 steps you're going to take to
That's
resolve that particular issue. And after you have put down the 2 steps you're going to take, you're now going to put a timeline, how long you think it will take you to resolve it. And whatever you have put down there, you now go to the other things that have been written down and do the same for them. When you have done this,
so you go back to the other piece of paper and do the same thing.
The same thing on it. So the things you wrote down for yourself and the thing your partner added for you, you do it for all of them. So let's say there are 10 things there on that sheet of paper, and you counted all the months. Maybe it came to 10 months. As human beings, we have been grossly known to overestimate our ability to make change. A human being is struggling with a habit. You tell them to change it. They tell you in the next 1 week, I will change it. Don't worry. Whatever timeline your partner puts there, double it for them. Whatever timeline they put on that sheet of paper, double it for them. That's a grace period of some sort. That is you showing them you're willing to support. So if it's going to take me 1 month to stop calling you names, give me 2. And when you have done this with your partner, you now get to the point where both of you now have to make it a serious deal. Because now you have to talk to yourself. So by the time I look at all the times, all the months here, and I see that everything comes to 2 years, what I do is I divide the number of months by the number of issues on that sheet of paper.
Okay, so 2 years and by 10. Okay.
Now, 2 years by 10. Well, most times it's usually more than 2 years if you add it up.
Okay.
So let's say it comes out to like 5 years or something and you divide it by 10. Whatever you get, that is the time, the projected, the ETA. That's your projected delivery timeline for both of you. And when you have done this, you now take one more step. You make it a serious deal. If at the end of this timeline, what will be the outcome? If we do not achieve more than 60% of the things here, what is the penalty? The penalty could be that we do it again. The penalty could be a separation. or the penalty could be a divorce. Because at that point, both of you know what is at stake. And if at the end of this timeline, we find out that we have achieved more than we anticipated, what do we do? What's the next step? Both of you discuss that again. That is the only time you now move to the final step. The final step is regular weekly check-ins.
Okay.
Remember, both of you came from a stage where you weren't talking to each other anymore. Then you went to a stage where you were self-reflecting.
Yeah.
Then you moved to a stage where you were able to create an experience with your partner. Then you moved to a stage where you were able to get your partner involved. Now you move to a stage where you're planning with them. You have a project ongoing with them. Where both of you can talk.
Marriage. Yeah.
Now you move to a stage where two of you have weekly check-ins, meaning that you must always talk. All the things that led you to the point where you started stonewalling each other, what you're simply doing with this exercise is reverse engineering them. And after you have done that, that's when you and your partner get to the point where you unpack resentment, because resentment will kill off any marriage if not attended to. That's how you unpack resentment.
Whoa! Wow, that was it. Okay, you see, I bring the experts to the show, and I'm super blessed to always have the experts come on the show. This is like a complete class for couples, and I'm sure somebody appreciates this happening right now. Being able to sit down and you being able to break this down to this point where it's so easily understandable. So, Doc, weekly check-ins is the last one, right?
Yes.
Then there's an unpacking. The person now can maybe start talking and great. Okay, so Doc, let's talk about before we wrap the show off. Let's talk about people whose method is or style for conflict avoidance is avoidance.
Okay.
Let's talk about those people who, because while I was preparing for the show, I had a question. We have issues, but I'm trying to get past my emotion and start connecting, but I just cannot. My way all these years is I avoid talking. I avoid, and I've tried, and I see that it's affecting my marriage. Doc, what do you say about people like that? So how can we help those people?
Okay, there's something we call the slippery slope of conflict resolution. And this slippery slope of conflict resolution is like an arc. It's like a half circle. On one end of that circle, you have something called suicide. On the other end of that circle, you have something called murder.
Okay.
It starts from suicide and it ends in murder.
This sounding so serious.
Yeah, it's a serious thing, because what it does is that it captures all the different stages people go through in conflict. But just to break it down and make it simpler, I'll focus on the 4 basic responses when it comes to conflict. There is something called the appeasal effect. The appeasal effect is when you have somebody who, maybe because the marriage has been abusive, whenever there is an attempt at conflict, they appease you. And we like to experience these things in therapy, which is why, there's a bit of therapy that allows for couples to argue in front of you. Because in them arguing, you get to learn some things off the hand about what they go through in their marriages. Now, people who appease, you notice that a husband or a wife pitches and suddenly the other person backs down. If it's happening in front of you as a therapist, imagine what happens
when you're not there.
When you're not there. Short of the fact that maybe the man or the woman is pretending because they have a third party there.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to play it cool.
Yes.
But sometimes you can actually see it genuinely play out, where one person pitches and the other person backs down. It's called appeasal. And it usually happens in marriages where there's a lot of abuse present. Where one person has gotten to a point where they've become so subdued that when a partner pitches, immediately they back down from them. It's called appeasal. Then you have what you call the escape.
Appeasal is very popular.
Yes, let's just have peace. Then you have what you call the escape effect. The escape effect happens when You find out that partners are arguing, and suddenly you find out that the other person just wants to leave the environment. They just want to go, which is what people call avoidance. It is one of the responses where they want to avoid and escape. Then you also have what you call the freeze effect. The freeze effect happens where abuse is the order of the day. Maybe physical abuse or something. Or emotional or verbal. Abuse is the order of the day. Psychological. You find out that now at this point, a partner says something or does something, and instead of even appeasing, you find out that the other person straight out freezes up. They freeze because they are actually afraid of their partner.
What category is this one?
So this is called the freeze.
The freeze, okay.
So you have appeasal, the appease effect. You have the flight or avoidance. You have the freeze. Then you have the last, which is the fight effect. People who have been pushed to the wall for so long that they can't take it anymore. You've pushed them to a point where they suddenly wake up and they tell themselves, you know what? No more. I'm going to fight back. So that's the fight response.
That's where you hear two people bickering and they're going at each other as you're giving, they're giving back.
They're giving basbos, like they say. You see, so that's where that happens. Where somebody gets to the point where they're like, you know what? No more. I can't take it anymore. You can't talk
to me like that anymore.
You can't keep disrespecting me. Yeah. You can't keep putting me down. You can't keep emasculating me. I can't take it anymore. And then they fight back. Those are the 4 basic responses. But the slippery slope I explained to you has some of these responses included in those 12 steps, but it's more complex. So that's the reason I'm just avoiding it. I wouldn't want to go into it. But you see, when
you wouldn't want to go into it, so you better find him on social media. Get him to go into it. Yeah.
You see? So when you get to that point where you find out that you've become avoidant, the first thing you must do is recognize that it is wrong. The fact that you're avoidant doesn't mean you're doing anything good for that marriage. Without knowing it, what you're doing is you're perpetuating a cycle called the abuse cycle. Yes, because you're now fueling another cycle in your marriage called the abuse cycle. Because the abuse cycle starts from a place of tension build up in your home. Then you move to the other phase, which is an abusive incident. Something happens. Then you move from that stage to what we call the honeymoon phase, where somebody now apologizes and says they are sorry, they are going to change. Then you move from that stage to the stage of calm, where there's peace, nothing has gone wrong, but in a while. Then you move from that stage to tension build up again, where tension begins to build up because there was no legitimate change happening. It was just somebody trying to be avoidant. That word again. Someone trying to avoid problems and complying and pretending all was okay. But after a while, either their apology starts to reduce in sincerity or something, and before you know it, the abusive behavior comes back again, and you're going through that cycle. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, still on that hamster wheel.
Doc, I'm sorry, I'm going to interject a little bit.
Yes.
What you said now paints a picture in my mind where we hear a lot of Christian religious people. Religious people who have been in marriage for so long, and they're advised to having a successful marriage, as it were, is the woman learning how to shut up.
Okay.
Look, I was in a certain Christian environment, and the person was saying that because they've been in the marriage for maybe nearly 26 years. But Doc, now that you're talking, I now remember a particular incident told me of a couple, Muslim couple, not about the religion anyway, but these are Muslim faithfuls, been in the marriage for so long, 45 years. The 5th wedding anniversary, they decided to go their separate ways. And this woman doesn't talk. So Doc, I'm trying to find the correlation between don't talk and successful marriage.
All right.
As people put it.
Okay.
Doc, long-term relationships, long-term marriage, does it necessarily mean be successful, please?
Well,
because that's what most times in Africa, that's what we paint it to be. But I seem to disagree. But I need your perspective on this.
Well, let's shake the table a little. You see, the first thing is this: they say charity begins at home. Mm-hmm. Before we go far, let's all also look at people closest to us. Mm-hmm. Let's all also look at the families each and every one of us came from.
Yeah.
Growing up, we all knew that there were some of us who never saw our parents argue. Mm-hmm. But that did not mean
they were not arguing.
Mm-hmm. Then there were some people who never saw their mother argue with their father. But that did not mean their mother was happy at the same time. Mm-hmm. Now, building it up from here, now you get married and maybe you import that mindset that there are certain things that must happen, those same expectations in marriage, in your own marriage, and you impose it, and you have a woman or a man by your side who isn't happy, but who also isn't talking. And then both of you go 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25, 30. And to the world, it looks like it is a successful marriage. The people who bear the damage are the children. Let me tell you, why do you think that some clerics, when you look at them and they seem to have it all together, just look at their children?
Hey.
Yes, we can say it's a spiritual thing. Maybe the devil left them because maybe the parent is too strong, and then the devil decided to affect the child.
Children, which is the common narrative.
Yes, maybe they didn't protect the children enough. I know there's a place for all of that. I'm a Christian, so there's a place for all of that. But let's be honest. A lot of in fact, when we talk about Christians, when we talk about people who have a lot of following, the truth is people will be shocked to know that they also come in for therapy. They also come in for therapy.
Because every marriage needs help.
Because they need help. And sometimes when you navigate these marriages with them, and you have to start unpacking some of the things, the callous that has been caused by, years of dogma, years of doctrine, that may not be really word-based, but maybe had been put in there for selfish reasons to glue certain things together in a marriage. Somebody had introduced something that the whole family had been following. You find out that the first complaints that come out from either, especially the wives, is that as much as they have tried to glue it together, that the people who suffered the most were the children. And when you truly sit down with some of these children to speak, that's when you find out that that's indeed true. Call it a spiritual attack, call it whatever you may, but I can tell you that it's dysfunction. Dysfunction breeds dysfunction. If you like, cover dysfunction for 30 years, 40 years. If it is dysfunctional, it is dysfunctional. And one day, the testament will come out. The testament is the children. If you want to know how healthy a marriage is, look at the children it produced. Look at the people who came out from that environment. That's what tells you what healthy is. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yes, Doc. Wow. Okay, this has been the Parents Cannot Helpline show on Lagos' Hardest radio station. Doc, I want you to just give me, just summarize, give me your final thoughts about resolving conflict in harmony, please.
Okay, so let me say this. Every marriage that does not experience conflict is suspect. If you tell me your marriage does not experience conflict, then there's room to suspect that marriage, because what it simply means is that something is not right. What a bodybuilder does with his set of weights is that when he picks a particular set of muscles that he wants to work on, he now gets a routine that directs efforts to those sets of muscles.
Okay.
So when you push against the weight, which is what you call resistance training, when he pushes against the weights in a particular way, it targets particular muscles. In that same way, let's assume that those weights are conflicts. When you and your wife push against conflicts and you direct it appropriately, your marriage grows. You don't avoid conflict. You embrace them and you navigate them as a couple. Meaning that there are some conflicts that come to test trust. There are some conflicts that come to test intimacy. There are some conflicts that come to test communication. Some conflicts test respect. If you are having a conflict that you're not directing, that you're not channeling to work on something, that means you and your partner are simply wasting your time.
Wow.
What you do to conflict is you channel it. Do not avoid it.
Okay.
Embrace it, but in embracing it, learn the healthy ways to navigate conflict as a couple. That's what you do. Learn the ways.
Learn the ways. Learn the ways. You heard it. I couldn't add any more. I hope you were taking notes. I hope this show has blessed you today. This has been the Parents Gonna Helpline Show. Vegas' hardest radio station, 93.3. Keep it locked here. I've had for the past 1 hour plus Dr. Temple OBK, keynote speaker, men's coach, psychotherapist. Very, very good at his job. This is his expertise. Marriages and fixing conflict. I've had him for 1 hour plus. I want to say big thank you to you, Dr. Temple.
You're welcome.
In fact, I don't know what to say, but I'm going to say it when I get home. Because I've been so blessed by this show for the past 1 hour. And thank you, Lagos, for tuning in and listening. I know this was more like a masterclass for a lot of people. Like, people are going through things, and he covered a lot. A lot was covered on the show.